industry.
Cheers, boys.
Cheers.
And Kris, welcome to Frederick and Attaboy Brewing.
Mm-hmm.
This is one of our go-to spots in town. We were just telling Carly, first of all, thanks to the Attaboy team for even letting us do this, but we were just telling Carly that the one thing that always stuck out to us, because she was commenting on our logo, and I was like, dude, the thing I liked most about you when I first came in was they knew their identity from the jump. Their marketing is exactly it's so cool. Everything stands out. The color scheme's awesome.
Yeah.
Their hats are great. Their shirts are great.
Yeah, they make good merch with that.
Stickers.
Yeah.
We love stickers.
We do love stickers. Well, Kris, thanks for making the trip. Where'd you come from today?
Purcellville, Virginia. It's
Okay.
in Northern Virginia, about 45 minutes south of here.
Okay.
So
We love the in-person interviews that we can do.
Totally.
So anytime we find out someone's like in our area,
Yeah.
that's super exciting.
Yeah, and it's just a good excuse to sit and drink beer too on a Friday.
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you guys having me on. I've loved listening to your guys' podcast.
Oh, cool. That's great to hear.
Learned a lot from you and your guests, and
Awesome.
I was actually joking around with my wife that to me the Modern Electrician podcast is kind of like it's like the Joe Rogan of trade podcasts. So this is like a big deal for me.
Awesome, man. I'm glad to hear that. I don't know if that's the case, but it definitely is good to hear. We try to connect and just share mostly our failings, but also our insights and I think the idea is to just give people a sense of humanness in what we do. We're all just people.
Mm-hmm.
And you make mistakes, and that's how you grow.
Absolutely.
So yours is an interesting story, Kris.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, because you reached out and you wanted to kind of talk, and we got on the phone and chatted a little bit. Tell us a little bit to start about your company and how your trajectory in the trades, how you got in and where you're at now.
Yeah. I mean, one of the reasons I wanted to come on was just having followed you guys for a while. I know you got into the trades a little bit later in life, and you guys have your own business here, and you guys are keeping it small. So I've just been really admired what you guys have done and kind of followed it. But yeah, just to kind of give you, I guess, a little background kind of on myself and how I got into it. Originally from California. Moved out to the East Coast after college, and originally got into political nonprofit fundraising.
Interesting.
And then that kind of eventually turned into recruiting for different government contractors in the Northern Virginia area.
Interesting. That's what brought you to Northern Virginia. I would imagine.
Exactly.
Big military presence.
Yes, that's all the government contractors are all in that area, all the big ones. But did that for about 8 years, and this is probably in my late 20s, early 30s. I just started to kind of hit a plateau with my job. I wasn't growing. I wasn't enjoying it anymore. I just felt, really stagnant, and I would get this kind of sick feeling in my stomach thinking about doing that job for the next 30, 35 years.
Yeah.
And this will sound kind of silly, but I kept having this I think it kind of started when I started having kids, but I would have this reoccurring dream of, I don't know what they call it, but it's like bring your dad to school day, or career day. You always see it in the movies where they line up all the dads, and you got the firefighter and the lawyer and the doctor and the policeman, and they're all saying what they do. And I just pictured myself being up there being like, yeah, so I'm a recruiter, and I just cold call people all day, and I sit in a cubicle, and I was just
your kid gets bullied.
Yeah, and my kid's just sitting there being like, ugh, gross, Dad.
I love this because it's in Office Space, the movie, there's this analogy, to find a person's ideal career. They say, what would you do if you didn't have to work, right? What would you do if you had $1 million? But I like that, where it's what would you do if you had to go tell a class of kids what you do?
Yeah.
How would you feel about that?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and I think, it sounds kind of stupid, but that was kind of, I think, one of those signs that led me to believe, okay, I need to make some sort of change here.
Why the trades? Why electrical trade?
Well, I always have a hard time answering that question because I can't really think of a specific moment that made me, make the switch. And, I think for me, I grew up surrounded by my dad and my grandparents. My dad was he's an electrical engineer. He was an entrepreneur, started his own cable TV business. And he could fix and build anything. My grandfather on my mom's side, he was a machinist, and he built his house from scratch. And my grandfather on my dad's side, he was an entrepreneur as well, and he, later in life, he would kind of rebuild and restore classic cars. And so all these guys worked with their hands, and so that was what I grew up, thinking like, every man knows how to work with their hands, and like that's what it's all about. And I rejected that as a kid because my dad would try to teach me things, but I was more interested in playing video games or going out with my buddies or just partying or whatever it was. But it wasn't until I bought my home in this was probably early 2018, and all the maintenance that just comes with home ownership, it kind of just slapped me in the face, being like, I don't know anything. I can't even change a ceiling fan. Like I didn't know anything. Yeah. And I remember my dad came and visited one day, and he was showing me how to replace outlets because I had all those old, ugly almond-colored outlets, and I wanted to swap them all out with white. And he was, he was showing me, and I was, stripping the wire and making little hooks and attaching them to, the terminals and putting on the nice clean cover plate and everything. And something about that was just like really like almost like therapeutic, and I found it just really enjoyable. Yeah. And I definitely can't, say the same about like painting or drywall. So, so I think it was those kind of things together was like, okay, maybe this is something that I could try to take on and really embrace. But it's a hard thing when you're, I was 32 when I made the change, and I had 2 kids at the time. I had this mortgage payment I was paying off, and so I knew I wanted to make a change, but it didn't really feel like something that you could do. You can't start over in your early 30s. That's insane. You know this.
All of that stuff to pay for, all of those people depending on you.
I got people relying on me. I had a steady salary. I had benefits. I had this going on. I wasn't enjoying it, but part of me was just like, no, you can't start over. It's too late. Like this is what you're going to be stuck doing. And I remember, like around this time, I was talking with my buddy Zach, and he had just made a big career change. I think he was doing writing, and then he started his own business. He started a media company, and I really admired it. And I was asking him about it. And I was like, how did you get the courage to do this? Like, I would love to do something like this, but I feel like I'm too risk averse. And I don't remember the exact quote, but he said something like. Sometimes the biggest risk is not taking a risk at all, and that kind of started getting the gears going in my head, thinking like, there's opportunity costs in everything you do, and every single decision you make is a trade-off, and just because you decide not to do something doesn't mean you're taking the less risky route. So
I love that. That's so good.
Yeah, and so that made me think, okay, yeah, I got to do something, because even if I fail, I can always go back, but I'm gonna kick myself, at the end of life if I feel like I never tried. So.
That's interesting. I feel like by default, you're always risking time. No matter what you're doing, time is risked. You could waste a lot of it.
Absolutely.
What were you going to say?
Well, I was going to. I don't remember. So it wasn't that valuable. I know. I was going to say. Well, it also doesn't hurt that in the trades you get paid to learn.
Yeah.
So people see it as like, okay, you're definitely taking a pay cut probably to what you had, but when you have to pay for schooling, you're actually going in the negative. Yeah. So it's like, while you do take a pay cut switching careers into the trades, you're still getting paid at all.
Yeah.
And it's like that. I think that's overlooked a lot.
Yeah, it's a great opportunity. Just the whole apprenticeship experience is great, and especially if you're young and you don't have all those responsibilities, it's such a perfect opportunity. I mean, to hop in there and just start making money and to be learning. I mean, it's incredible opportunity, and it's really unfortunate that you try to push that more, in high school or just kind of societally at all. I mean,
it makes me wonder. Because you came from the white-collar world, as did I.
Yep.
It makes me wonder if it's just inevitable that whatever you do first ends up being this thing that you feel stuck in, because there are people in the trades that feel that way.
Yeah.
My dad's like that. He doesn't feel that way now. He's proud of what he's done, and he's started his own company. But I think that lends itself, right? Whatever you start doing there, you hit a point where you're like, wait, am I stuck? And it's nice to know that through your story too, it's possible to make a jump, right?
Yeah, well, and I guess that's the advantage we have, is coming from a more kind of corporate white collar world, is we've seen that the other side of the fence isn't green. The grass isn't necessarily greener. Where a lot of people, I think, who get into the trades young or maybe fell into the trades because they didn't have another opportunity. Yeah, they don't really have that point of view or that perspective. Yeah. And so I think it allows us, when we run into like a
that's you.
Well, no, I was just thinking, because like when Doug and I we're talking about starting this company, he was telling me about his past endeavors, and he's got a pretty interesting past. And one of them was he was working for this guy making like ringtones and stuff. And he told me what he was making doing that, and I was like, why aren't we starting that business?
It's like when people are like, that sells like hotcakes. It's like, why don't we just make hotcakes?
Yeah. It's like, but that's what's so telling is he was had that background, making more money than we were potentially going to make in what we were stepping into, and he was still doing it. And it's like, okay, so there's clearly something I'm not seeing about that lifestyle. Now, also, ringtones are not a big thing these days.
I saw the end coming. I saw the end coming. That guy has transitioned into some really cool stuff. But I knew for me I needed something else. And also, as far as like white collar stuff is concerned, I actually came from like the entertainment industry, and it's usually the other way around. People will work in a trade or their job forever and be like, I should just try
and they get a
stand
big
up,
break.
and it's like that's going to be the thing. And it was the opposite for me, where I did it, experienced some success, and was not happy. The lifestyle wasn't for me. It messed with my mental health a lot, and it was just like I can't.
Was it more just kind of the hours you were keeping? Or?
I don't like being out late. I'm a morning. I excel in the morning. Nighttime, I'm garbage. I've always been like that. It was being away from home.
Yeah.
I remember getting ready to go on stage. I was featuring at a club I've always wanted to work at, and I remember standing outside of the showroom and feeling like I don't even know any of these people. Like I'm sacrificing. All my friends are hanging out tonight and doing this thing.
Yeah.
And I've worked for a decade to perform on this stage and to go do what I'm about to do. And all I can sit and think about is that I'm missing out on the thing that's more important to me because I don't even know these people.
Right.
And it doesn't hit everybody like that probably, but it hit me like that. And so the way forward was like, well, what else could it be? And I felt the same way through gardening and farming. It was like, whoa, this feels good. This works demons out.
Yeah. Well, and you've done a really good job of being able to transition some of your kind of comedy over to this podcast and some of the stuff you do on social media and everything. And so
thank you.
I feel like you still kind of have that outlet a little bit.
It's 100%. And not only that, but like, and we'll talk with you about this too, but it's there's such a creative element to starting a company. It's your brand. It's your identity, it's your content and information nowadays, and it's your work. Every one of those is incredibly creative if you want it to be. And I've found that it's a really good balance of all of it. Some days I'm just building the brand. Some days I'm in a crawl space working with my hands, and I like the switch.
Yeah, it's so funny and kind of, going back to what we were talking about the, there's so many people in this industry because I think they maybe fall into it or they don't have that perspective. They're miserable. And I talked to so many coworkers in my previous jobs that just hated being an electrician. And I'm sitting there wondering like, well, why are you doing it? But it's just I guess it's kind of the same problem. They feel like they can't make a change at this point. But I remember when I first the first company I worked for when I was an apprentice, I was working for MC Dean, which is a big big electrical contractor out here. But like one of my first weeks on the job, I was talking to this other guy. He was maybe a third-year apprentice, and I was telling him that I quit this corporate job to come do this, and his mind was just blown. He was like, you're making a steady salary with benefits, and I was working. It was like being in COVID, so I was working from home, and he's like, so you're working from home every single day, and you choose to get up, at 5 o'clock and come here and work in this dirty, loud factory. And I was kind of sitting there like, I guess I did. And I was trying to explain to him like, I wasn't happy, and I didn't feel fulfilled in my old job and everything. And he was just rolling his eyes, and he was like, man, if I wasn't happy with my job and I was working from home, he's like, I'd just go to the beach every day. He's like, you can't not be happy at the beach. And I was like,
that's a good point.
I was like, I kind of get that perspective, but I think that only lasts for so long. If you're not challenging yourself, if you're not growing, I think you become complacent, and at least for me, that would just lead to a life of misery, and I just wouldn't be happy.
And there are different personality types out there. And for example, the guy who says his goal would be the beach every day should start an electrical company by a beach, but he's not. And so I think that really illustrates how in every industry, every company you go to, my wife deals with this with a girl she's working with right now. It's like she's moving departments, and what you find is that she's not unsatisfied in each department. She has a bad attitude. So she's going to be unsatisfied no matter where she goes.
Attitude is
so
everything.
It's like, it's like you're going to find that in any industry.
It's so true.
So it's like, I think very often people that are miserable, either it's the job or it's just them.
Yeah.
You know, it's like they'd be miserable at the beach.
And they are miserable
That
at
dude
the
is
beach,
probably
yeah,
miserable
right.
at the beach,
Yeah.
for sure. He's not fun.
It's an easy thing to get hooked into. A negative mindset's, I think, it's the easier approach in my opinion. It's like the lazier approach to just go with your emotional feeling at the time and be like, well, this is it. And then it's also cultural. I think crabs in a bucket, we talk about that. If you're hanging around negative people and everybody hates stuff, and you come in, say you come up in that culture. Somebody like you, who came in later, you've had time to develop your perspective, and this is new for you. Whereas somebody that was miserable maybe just got raised in the trades by a bunch of miserable bastards who every day were like, I hate this, and that's true too. It's like there's a lot of that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and we kind of live in a society now too, where every single, any sort of challenge or any sort of, you have a hard day or just anything that doesn't go your way, people just look as like, oh, this is just a major burden. And I remember listening to I think it was like Jordan Peterson or something talking about how life is I don't remember what he said, like life is misery, or life is a struggle, or basically you have to basically either embrace those struggles, or the struggles are basically gonna find you, essentially. I don't remember the exact quote.
There's no struggle.
Exactly. I mean, every single person is going to go through that adversity, and either you choose the adversity and you go in full force and you tackle it, or it's going to come get you in later in life. And so, going into the trade, I kind of had that mentality, and it's like I run into things every single day, being kind of inexperienced that I don't know, and that's a big challenge for me, and I have to constantly be overcoming, and it's frustrating sometimes. But you kind of realize it's like, well, I could either be doing this or I could be miserable at my old job, and when you have that perspective, it just keeps you going and keeps you driven. And
do you have anybody that you're able to reach out to, like a mentor or anybody?
I don't really, and that's kind of
Call us.
That's one thing I was kind of hoping, coming on and meeting you guys is. At my old company, I worked under this really great master electrician who was, he had been doing it for about 30 years and very experienced. And he was the guy who trained me in my last company. But since leaving there, I feeling like I can't really use him as a
I've always been proud of you, and now you're leaving. You're dead to me.
kind of, yeah. And so, kind of what I do is when I have questions, I go online, which is always a disaster.
Yeah.
Or there is a lot of resources out there, a lot more than there used to be. But even still, having someone that you can call is, I think, so valuable, and it's definitely kind of a hole I have.
One thing about the trade, and I can't speak for the other trades, but ours specifically, we've talked about that before, where it's like you leave the wing of the former master, and it's very rare that they're going to be like, hey man, good for you, call me anytime you need help.
Instead, they're probably going to try to egg
you are
your
my
house.
competition.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So if there's anything about the trade that we're actively trying to change, it's that. And it's like the people we meet at Nika, those are the same like-minded people. Like I feel like any of those people we met, we can call and be like, hey man, I've never worked in this scenario before.
100%.
What are your thoughts? Now, the AHJ, the codes might be a little different, so it's harder.
But at least getting a second opinion on something.
Man.
Yeah.
Like, the
We
amount of
call
times-
each other all the
That's
time.
our benefit to this company. Is the greatest benefit is that I can call when I get into a customer's house. I'm like, you know what? Let me make a few phone calls. I call Doug and I'm like, hey man, what do you think?
Yep.
Even if I have a plan in mind, just to run it by somebody else. It's like sometimes you need that sounding board.
Yeah, that's so great that you guys went into this together and you guys have each other as a resource to bounce ideas off. It's
Call
so
us,
valuable.
man.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
I mean it.
I will if you actually.
I mean it.
If you're serious about that, I will
that's
call
the
you.
network.
Bring us on. Just call it, because it's not always like,
It's not always electrical.
and it's not always technical. A lot of times it's like personal or craftsmanship question, or like, am I overthinking this? Like, what would you think about? There's a lot to talk about.
We were talking about earlier we talked to Cameron, Tennessee electrician today, and it's like, you'll have a situation where you know the right thing to do, but you're like, I'm also running a business. I potentially risk losing this job by doing the right thing. And not that anyone out there is morally questionable, but sometimes you just need someone to say, yeah, man, you know the right thing to do is just have the conversation with the customer. It's like it reassures you to hear somebody else who's been through it be like, oh yeah, let me tell you, I've been burned by that before.
Yeah, sure.
Don't go down that road. So it's like we kind of need. since our previous mentors kind of refused to give us that, we kind of have to be that for each other.
100%.
It's like,
And give that back and
Yeah.
pay that forward, because it's like when you get kind of dumped on by somebody who you didn't do anything to aside from like do the same thing that they did, which is start a company.
Yeah.
It shows you that's like I'm not going to do that. Like it's first of all I don't understand that, but like
Well, yeah, it's not really a zero-sum game. I mean,
Yeah.
people. Yeah, I think people get worried like, oh, you're my competition. I want to help you out. But like, there's such high demand right now, and there's so much work out there that there's plenty to go around. Is all I'm saying. And so it's just silly that we fight amongst each other and we don't want to share secrets and all that kind
you
of
want
stuff.
to talk about attitude and mindset.
Yeah.
We've talked about this before. You might have heard it. It's beating a dead horse at this point. But Stephen R. Covey wrote a book in the 90s, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And the biggest thing I took from that book, I'm not very effective, but the biggest thing I took from that book was there are 2 mindsets: scarcity mindset and abundance mindset.
Right.
And scarcity mindset is so worried that there's not enough work out there that you're trying to put out other people's candles to make yours brighter.
Yeah.
And the reality is, and me and Doug realize it, we don't have competition. And that's not to say we're great. That's to say that like there's enough work that none of the businesses can get it all tackled.
yeah, we're our competition.
We are our biggest competition.
Yeah.
It's like I'm not, and if a customer doesn't like our prices, that's no reflection of another company or they don't like us. It's like, no, that's not how it works. They probably wouldn't go for it either way.
Yeah.
But it's like,
Yeah, you guys offer a certain service that costs a certain price, and someone else might offer a slightly different service at a different price. But,
And there are things you can't compete with. There are just certain things we can't compete with because we're small. And
Yeah.
you're learning that too. It's
Right.
like you've got to stay in a specific lane maybe to keep it that way. Like we were just talking this morning, we don't bid on new construction or renovations because there's no way. There's 2 of us, number one, so we can't keep up with it. And we're 2 master electricians. So we're not going to compete with a company that's throwing apprentices at a project that they can pay lower.
Does
We'll
1,000
never
houses a year,
compete.
yeah.
And so it's just not something we even bid on.
Yeah.
We've got to. You'll learn and dial in your niche, and it'll appear. The lanes will open, and you're like, okay, that makes more sense. Yep. Yeah. What have you found so far that works for you? Like, what are the things you're taking on that you like?
I mean, I've been shocked with how quickly it's picked up. I mean, my wife's been trying to get me to do this, and I kind of was like, oh, I need a little more time. Need a little more time. But she was like, no, you just got to jump in. She was like, I'll take care of all the marketing and everything, and she has. I think she put out like one of those next door posts or something.
Yeah.
And
you need to keep her.
yeah, I mean, she already had
various
just a great
reasons.
friend at work, but I mean, from day one, my schedule just filled up, and I'm booked a month out, and
Yeah,
it's
great.
just been constant referrals, and it's just like a constant snowball. It just keeps growing, and and I'm still relatively new to the trade overall, but I think especially when it comes to residential electrical, I think 80% of the job is honestly your interactions with the customers. Obviously, I pride myself on my work too. I'm a perfectionist. I do everything by code, all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, the customer, for the most part, I don't think can tell someone's work from another person's work. They ask, does it work and is it safe? And that's their number one concern. But I think what gets you the callbacks and gets the referrals is your interactions with the customers. And that was kind of the market need that I saw when I decided to start my business. Is I call it bringing white collar professionalism to a blue collar trade, and I think there's just a massive demand for that. I mean,
I agree.
I was cracking up at your Instagram story the other day when you were talking about the story about
The dude with his shirt off.
yeah, it comes out with his shirt off, the plumber,
the Mountain Dew man.
and I'm thinking that is the bar. Like, just keep your shirt on. That's all you have to do, and show up with a smile on your face.
Well,
and,
I had one day when I went into a house and the plumber had been working there, and this is always tricky, right? Because we wear shoe covers in the house,
right.
and
even that some people don't do. It's just like, come on.
And I step in and I put them on, and the homeowner had run upstairs to get something, and the plumber's waiting there to ask her a question, and I put them on. He looks down at me and he goes, "You make me look bad, man."
It's like, no, sir, you're doing that all by yourself. It's as easy as purchasing shoe covers.
Yes.
It's not like I'm coming in and out like.
Well, you
I'm
know
not
what,
like- I don't have,
what
like,
might have
some
been the
special
problem,
tools.
and we
Yeah.
experience this all the time. This has been my pet peeve. I've been doing this 18 years. My pet peeve since I started doing this was how how many people limit themselves to what they can get from their boss. So he works for somebody else. If his boss doesn't provide him with shoe covers, he's like, company doesn't do it, man.
Yeah.
It's like, well, okay, spend $20 on Amazon and elevate your game.
Right.
Yeah,
It's like
it's an
the
attitude
idea that
thing,
you might
yeah.
have
It
to
is an
spend a little
attitude
bit of
thing.
your own money for yourself. Because I had another guy I worked for. He said, look, man, whether you work for another company or yourself, you're always working for yourself.
Yeah.
In the sense that you are your own brand.
But those are the mindsets of people who are probably going to start their own company. Because
Exactly.
if you go above and beyond for the company you work for, even your boss knows it. Like
He's
when
like, crap.
when I left the last,
You bought that yourself?
I know
he's
what's
like,
happening
I can buy you power tools. You're like, I got my own. He's like, damn it.
He's like, what do I got, 3
Yeah,
years?
yeah, right,
Yeah.
maybe. He's like, how far are you out from your master's? Okay, I'll plan around that. He said, when I told my last boss I was going out on my own, he said, I figured it
I
out.
knew it.
Yeah, I mean that's how I treated my last job. I mean from day one I treated it, because I did have the goal to start my own business, but I treated it from day one like, I wanted to pretend like, this is my truck, these are my customers, like how would I act, and I treated every single day like these were going to be my long-term customers, and when you do that, I mean it builds practice for when you actually do get on it on your own.
And it's really good for the company you work for. You
Yeah.
really do help
It
build
shows,
their
yeah.
brand. And it makes the person who owns that company look like they know exactly what they're doing when they're hiring people, and they've created a culture that facilitates that. And maybe they have. It's really interesting. I try to take the time when I can. I always talk to clients. Number one, I say, how'd you hear about us? I ask that almost every time. And then I was in a house recently, and a guy kind of told me on his own. We had an electrician in here before, and we weren't really happy with him. So I said, if you don't mind telling me, what was it about that person that because I'm so curious. It's like, what makes a bad electrician to this person? And he said, he was messy. He said, even though it was a work zone, he left his little strips of insulation on the ground. He didn't clean up at the end of the day. That was the first thing he mentioned. It wasn't that the guy did poor work. It wasn't that the lights didn't function. He had a bad experience with the guy. Number one, because he was messy. Number two, he didn't communicate.
Yeah.
And that's the stuff we're always talking. It's like, you can be so good at it. You can go in and be a wizard.
You could be the best electrician.
If you
but
can't talk to people and you don't treat their home with respect, you're not respecting your own quality of your own work.
I remember I was an apprentice. This is years ago. I was working with a guy who was the GC on the job, and he was going around. This is a rough end, and he's going around on Friday with a shop vac, vacuuming up the corners of a rough end. Right?
Yeah.
He's got subfloors, 2x4s.
Yeah.
And I was like, Wayne, what are you doing, man? And he's like, let me tell you something. I've been doing this for 40 years. He's like, this will go way further than anything you can imagine.
Yeah, for sure.
And I've kept that in my mind.
Yeah,
And it's like,
it's a big deal.
to the point where now I've always taught people, we don't clean up at the end of the day. We clean up periodically.
Yeah.
And it's like, because if you go to lunch, we know we're going to clean up at the end of the day and it's going to look great. But if you go to
And
lunch
they
with
walk
a
through
construction
there.
zone,
Customer
we walk through it.
they're
Yeah.
gonna be like,
That's their house, man.
yeah. Treat it with respect.
Respect it how you would your house.
Yeah, I mean, I get so many comments from customers just saying things like, "Oh, wow, you're the first person who actually returned my call, or actually showed up when they said they were, or actually actually returned an estimate when they said they were, or didn't track dirt through my house." And I mean, these are all simple things. Coming from the white collar world, these are things that are a given and expected of you
100%.
in a corporate environment. But for some reason, it's just severely lacking in the trades, and it's kind of unfortunate.
We're not taught it. I think that, and that's where we come across, is like, that's our entire mission, is soft skills. It's like, we're all taught hard technical skills.
Right.
That's what everybody's focused on: code, which they should be. Everybody's focused on technique, which they should be.
Yeah.
Everybody's focused on tools, which they should be. But no one's out there being like, hey man, you look like shit. Like, you can't go, we can't do that.
I know we talked about this recently because, like, I think there's some people out there that you could say this to, and they're going to look at you and be like, "Yeah, you take that with, just go on."
Yeah.
But then there's other people who just don't know it. So, like, a young guy who's up and coming, who's going to have his own business someday, maybe, just doesn't know, like, oh, really? Customers actually notice that? It's like, trust me, man. And so they'll take that to heart. So it's like, some people just haven't been taught that.
I agree, and
You know?
it's culture. It's like culture. You're not, if the person you're working for, if you're out with a master, you're out with a journeyman, and they don't do it, why would you even know?
Yeah.
How would you? This is what we do. We come in with our shoes on. We don't put shoe covers on.
Mountain,
You know what I mean?
I bet Mountain Dew
take our
Man, the
shirts
plumber.
off.
I would say Mountain Dew Man, the plumber, probably was a young apprentice, and his boss was like, "Hey, Bob, check this out."
Yeah. Well, I want to know, like, at what point he removed the shirt. Like, was it when he was like...
Did he knock on the door that way?
Yeah, he was like, or did he go in and be like, hey, you have some beautiful children.
I had a plumber take his shirt off at my house one time, but he was at least outside. He was replacing the well pump, so I was like, all right, we'll let that slide. But it was a hot day.
I've definitely found corners outside to change my shirt because I'm disgusting when it's hot outside. I sweat like somebody is behind me all day dumping a bottle of water. So
Another round, boys?
yeah, get us around.
Oh, please, thank you.
Yeah, one for me too. Thank you.
Yeah.
So where do you are you at the point where you feel like you see where you want to go? You feel like you want to grow? Do you want to stay small? What are your thoughts in that realm?
I mean, when I started, I was thinking, I want to be a one-man show. I want to keep it small. I listened to you guys, and you guys kind of have a similar mentality.
Totally.
You kind of like the size you're at. You guys kind of have, a niche in the market, and you guys try to, provide a premium service and kind of keep it at that level.
Yeah.
And that's kind of my goal going into it. But I've already, I'm only 3 or 4 months in, but I'm already maxed out. Like I'm already at capacity.
That's all you can take.
And it does make me think about the future. Wondering, if maybe that's fine. Maybe I hit this level and I'm comfortable with that. But if I do ever want to grow, ultimately right now I'm just trading money for man hours, and essentially you get capped out at a certain amount of hours per week. So if you do ever want to expand, it's something I have to think about. And then I'm constantly worried about too. I got into this at 32. What happens when my body starts to break down?
That's
That's the thing we all are scared of, and so. It's on the back of my mind. It's not something right now. I like where I'm at. I want to stay small, but I am thinking about, I probably 5-10 years, I may want to consider maybe I have to bring on some new people, maybe figure out another income stream, something.
Yeah,
but
totally. I think that's smart. Are you doing anything? Do you exercise? Do you do anything that like keeps your body in shape to to prevent?
It sounds like my doctor.
It's true though. It's so true.
Yeah, whenever people ask me that, I'm like, well, I don't need to because I exercise every day.
My dad says that too, and he's terribly unfit.
Yeah, and I have terrible back problems and all that
That's
stuff.
the big one. Back problems are the big one. We struggle with that. Luckily, and I'm going to knock on wood, but typically our backs go out intermittent, like not at the same time typically.
Oh, okay.
So one of us will be able to pick up the slack for the other one till that back goes out.
Right, it's like twin babies, one's sleeping while the other's awake.
It's funny though. It's in the same line as like professionalism, I think, because it's cultural. Thank you, Josh. It's cultural in that that's a mentality, right? And I've run into
Nice.
I ran into a plumber and he said the same thing. It's like I run up and down these steps all day, and that makes sense. You are exercising big time when you're running up and down steps. I'm not saying you're not. But what about stretching? What about diet?
Yeah.
It's like we have to kind of think of ourselves, and this is my opinion, obviously, but as some sort of like professional athlete, because as professional athletes do, they rely on their body to make money for them, and if their body doesn't work, they can't make money.
Imagine telling the customer that, ma'am, I am basically a professional athlete.
You know how you watch football? I'm like the OBJ of the electrical trade.
Put like little weights on your clients and swing back and forth. Yeah.
But no, that's the speech my wife gives me all the time. She's like your body is the company. Like your body's the greatest tool, and you need to maintain it like you maintain your van. Like she's constantly trying to she's like, we need to just schedule you for regular trips to the chiropractor and massages and all these things.
Once a month to the
I'm
chiropractor.
telling you, Doug and I partnered up, but it sounds like you've already got that.
Yeah.
Your wife is on. Keep her on board.
She's
great.
She's been great.
Dude, both Doug and I, our wives are super supportive. My wife has been amazing through this process.
Yeah, totally.
So it's like,
starting
a business.
I was.
If they're not behind it, it's not going to work.
Well, yeah, it's going to be really tough. But yeah, I was telling Doug, my wife was the one who pushed me to do a lot of the stuff. But she handles all my scheduling. She did all the marketing, all the social media. She follows up with people for reviews. I mean, she does all that stuff.
Awesome, dude.
So she just allows me to go basically be the installer and just hold the license. And so she's essentially 2/3 of the company. And I definitely couldn't do it without her. But she's always on my back about you gotta treat your body better. And I think one of the best things you can do is just pack your lunch every day, because it's a
Josh
bad
is a
habit to go.
big believer in that.
Otherwise, you go out and you just eat out every single day, and the money's one thing, but it's just you just eat like crap when you're eating out every day. So. That's
I'm a lunch prepper as well. I prep ahead of time, have plans for it. It's a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, I think your body can't be understated. It's like, this is hard, and you're gonna be in pain. There's no way around it.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna get old, and it's gonna hurt a lot. So
Pain is inevitable.
Yeah.
Suffering's a choice.
That's true. I feel like it's also like you're always gonna be. I feel like if you don't work out younger. If you don't put in an effort young, and I'm realizing this. I mean, I've exercised my whole life, but inconsistently, right?
Yeah, me too.
If you don't work out a lot when you're younger, when your body wants to be toned, if you work out later, you're going to be on a treadmill, not a physical one, but metaphorically speaking, and you're just going to be working your ass off to maintain the shitty body. It's like you're uphill climbing.
You're trying to stop from going from love handles to full beer belly.
Because once you hit 40, your body wants to suck. It wants to be like, I quit.
Testosterone's
just
dropping.
It's Mountain Dew man. Your body starts to Mountain Dew man. It's like there's nothing you can do except work out, and even then, it's like it's hard.
And so, all right, you run your own business, right? And it's like, I was talking with Linda, who does all of our back office stuff. She's amazing. And I said, hey, is like health stuff, is that like potentially like a company cost? She's like, totally.
Yeah.
So it's like massages and the cost of going to a gym. It's like, those are the kind of things that like, all right, small business in America, they don't really take care of you the way they say they want to. You're kind of like, you either kind of have to be a massive corporation or completely small. Like anywhere in between kind of gets shafted. But it's like, some of the benefits absolutely are buying things through the company that you can use in the company, whether it's clothing or tools or your health. It's like, I think very few people really take that into account. It's like, what can I consider a health expense that's going to help my business?
Right.
It's like, when you're a small company, your personal life and your work life are so closely connected.
Totally.
Almost all of it.
Yeah.
To some degree.
Yeah.
I don't think I can put a grocery store, bill on as a company write-off, but
Let's
you get
talk
pretty
to Linda.
close.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I hate taking those days off to go to the doctor or do whatever needs to be done because I'm so busy, and it's like, these are days I'm not getting paid now, but you really do have to think about, you're changing your car's oil is what you're doing, and it's like if you don't do those things when it breaks down, now you think about all the money you're losing then. I mean, you have to keep that on the back of your mind, and it's hard
big
to
picture
in the moment.
thinking.
Yeah.
It's like good economics where you're buying something with more money up front, but in the long term it lasts longer. It's a similar way of thinking.
Yeah, and when you're running your own business, we talk about it a lot, but you do almost have to view your downtime differently. So taking those little like helping yourself moments, that's not really a loss to your business. It's really not. It's like we see it, because even if we're not taking off to go to the doctors to fix our body, we're taking off. Maybe we just have an early day. It's like, we're working on the podcast, we're working on the brand. I'm working on. Big thing for me is getting out into nature and going on walks. That's kind of how I keep my sanity. So it's like, if that keeps me sane Monday through
man.
Thursday, then a Friday hike is worth it. It's like so.
You gotta ask what your time, what's your time worth to you, and it's also not, depending on what you want to do, it's not always about just making money. It's super important, don't get me wrong. You live and die by the decisions you make and how much money you make at a certain time. And we've said this on here before, like, it's not that time is money. When you own a business, money's time. And I think that's a big reason, and I've probably talked about this before, but there's a big reason that you get stuck if you're working a job because you don't have time. You are at a place for a number of hours, 8 to 12, whatever it is. You don't leave there.
You're right.
You're working there. It doesn't matter, especially in the white-collar world. It doesn't matter if you don't have a ton of stuff to do. You got to get there, and you got to be there.
Yep.
I hate that. I've always hated 9-to-5s for that reason, because it's like, yo,
It's a lot of waste.
what if you can get 8 hours of work done in 4 hours? What if you're more efficient than someone else? That's a drag. And so, money's time. If with your company you can take on projects that give you chunks, maybe that time is what you use in specific segments to think about what's the next step forward, instead of just always being buried. You're not thinking, you're not planning, you're just one to the next.
Running around with your head
Running,
cut off.
yeah,
like
that's
a-
right.
yeah.
And so there's something to be said for that too, but it does depend on the size of your company. Like if you got a bunch of employees, you don't really have that luxury, right? You're probably making a lot more money maybe, depending on how you
Potentially. But it brings its own headaches. Yeah.
It just depends on what you want to try to do. And there's so many different things you can try to do in this industry. I mean, there's just like the sky's the limit. And that's the other thing about, like, I love this idea that you came over from the white collar world because you were worried about what your kids would think about it. Yeah, I love that, because listen, right now I own a 100-year-old house, 110 years next year.
Congratulations.
Fuck that house. I love my house, but man, it's a pain in my ass. And I've got a stacked fieldstone wall in the basement, and I'm going through and I'm remortaring that whole thing, because they mortared with dirt back in 1914. And so I'm literally tuck pointing that whole wall from one side of the house all the way around, and I'm scraping it all out, and all I'm thinking about, this is what I'm thinking about. I'm thinking, my grandkids might see this. and they wouldn't it be cool if you had a whole wall in your house redone, the entire wall, and you'd be like, my grandpa did that.
Yeah.
Isn't that
whatever
silly?
motivates you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
what my wife said. She's like, I'm glad that motivates you, man.
Meanwhile, the guys who built the house would be like, that thing's still standing? Man, we did a terrible job on that thing.
I mean, it's
Torn down ages ago.
we talk about, there's a small segment we're doing this season called Talking Out Loud, and we've got a short one that's about craftsmanship. But within that, the whole idea that this is your legacy. If you're, like you're saying, if you're working in a white collar world, it can be hard to tangibly identify what it is that you leave behind, other than the life you've provided for your kids, which is relevant and big. But what are the tangible things that your kids at the end of the day could be like, my dad, like you said, my grandfather built this. That's what you remember.
Yeah, I do.
And that's valid and valuable.
And I'll tell you, and so you own your own business, so I can say this to you, but like something like one of your shirts. So as we make different shirts and stickers, some of them are like limited runs. I always set one aside, and I have this little like almost like a time capsule for my daughter Lucy.
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, when she's in college, and she cuts it all up and ties it on the side.
Yeah.
How girls do. Right?
Yeah, they do.
But like she's gonna be like, this is one of my dad's shirts from that company.
That's right.
Went up in flames.
And one of our methods in that respect of marketing is we print T-shirts, and these T-shirts are so cozy, and we really like the brand logo, and so do other people. So we share them. And I was at the fair this year in town, and I saw some Lumen Brothers T-shirts and was like,
Really?
That's what I'm talking about.
That
Because
is awesome.
And you get a lot of companies are like, oh man, you don't want someone wearing your shirt. And like, it's like
repping your brand who isn't.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know. I kind of think that
Get your name out there.
Yeah, people are not going to forget some
Why would you
homeless
not?
man, like riding on a flaming bike down the street.
Free advertisement.
It's like, it's like, like Lumen Brothers.
I don't know about the homeless person. People will be like, I really need to call that electric company. That guy seems to really like them. But it's the idea of like, there's a million ways to market your company, a million ways. And like, what do you want to put your money into? What, are you a phone book kind of guy who names the company with a letter A so they think it shows up at the,
Those days are over.
A Daniel Electric.
yeah, so it's like, there's a million ways. And so you can buy billboards, you can do, whatever. We like making shirts.
Yeah.
We
Well,
like
that's
wearing
the thing.
shirts. Yeah.
That's we like doing this.
Yeah, right.
That's you can't make everything fun, but as much as you might be able to, try it.
Yeah,
it's
I mean,
like
even when a day sucks, though, especially if we're working together. We're laughing all day. Even if we're getting our asses kicked, we're laughing at ourselves. It's like there's an opportunity
Dude,
to
that's
make it
like
good.
that's somewhere in the definition of morale, right? It's like having somebody else with you. It's like that's where old sea shanties come from. It's like it's just like you're finding a way to make it fun.
I knew you were going to bring sea
And
shanties up
people
in it.
still sing them to this day. My daughter, so my wife, there's one, the Billy O.T., I forget the name of it, but
Yeah.
my wife loves it. And now my 6-year-old daughter sings it.
Edie knows one
So
too.
the three of
yeah.
us are putting a puzzle together the other night, and Lucy's singing a sea shanty. It's like, what 6-year-old knows a sea shanty?
Yeah, that's right.
You know?
She's probably going to bring some sort of sea monster back to life by doing that.
I would say it's the one downside of going out on my own is kind of, you guys are lucky, I think, being in it together. In that, I kind of miss the camaraderie of being back at like a bigger company when you're working with a crew of guys.
It's a big deal.
You can probably relate, like you were in the Marine Corps, right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, you kind of have that, you're in the foxhole together kind of mentality, and you kind of build that brotherhood.
It's a big deal.
And that I think is really a really positive environment, I think, and really enjoyable, especially for a lot of like young men. And so when you're out on your own, and you're just working by yourself all the time, you do kind of miss kind of that camaraderie and be able to kind of shoot the shit with somebody. So yeah.
Now I will say, if you look at our schedule, because we use a Google Calendar to schedule everything, and it's color coded, most of the time we're not together. So we get together on some projects.
And that makes sense.
And we get together on things like this.
Yeah.
Some bigger stuff probably.
But yeah, so it's like it's the same thing we were talking about like with a mentorship. It's like where or just a ability to bounce ideas off of people.
Yeah.
So maybe you're by yourself as a company, but it's like you get together with us once a month or something, and hang out.
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
like you have. There's a network out there. If there's anything that social media and modernity have brought about, it's the idea that you can connect with other like-minded people and maybe not be in the same company or the same trench that day.
But relate and learn and step your game up because of them. I mean, how much have we learned by just following the people that we follow online that are, and not only just learn, but like when you see some of that work, you're like, I need to step my game up.
Yeah.
That's good. How do I do it? How do I do it better than that?
Yeah.
I remember being in the Marines and like really there's something about that camaraderie, and then going into like stand up, and there was that too, and then I worked kind of from home for a while, and it wasn't until I got back into the trades, the first company I worked for that had a bunch of dudes.
Yeah.
I was like, oh yeah, they're gonna make fun of me the whole time. I missed that.
And you go home and you're talking to your wife, and she's like, she has to like be like very politely like, because this happened with Jocko. Right? You know who Jocko is?
Yeah.
He was like at one point he was talking to his wife, and she very politely was like, I'm not on the team. You follow me? Like,
Tone it down.
You better stop giving me crap.
Tone it down.
Yeah.
Roger.
Yeah, well, and I have that. I have that craving to want to like be back in that environment, and so I'll go home and I'll try to unload all the stuff on my wife, and I want to like debrief with her, and she just could not care less. And she's like, I'll handle all the marketing and everything, but you talk to me about anything technical. Like
You come in the house and slap a drink out of her hand. It's like, what the fuck? You're like, I'm just messing with you.
Hey, come on. But yeah, it's fun.
I'm sure I would miss that.
Yeah, well, and you're right. I mean, there's been books written about this, but it's like men especially kind of thrive from being part of a band. It's like there's something to it.
Yeah.
It's like you kind of you give each other crap, but you also kind of like that helps you be like, don't take yourself too seriously.
That's right. Yeah.
But you're also like, that's my boy.
Yeah, that's
like,
right.
It
Yeah.
builds you up at the same time.
Yeah.
It's like
I love the whole giving shit thing and teasing your friends. I'm brutal sometimes. That's
how we show our love.
It is. I was a comedian, so when you hang out with comedians, it is brutal. You pull no punches. Like we would do roasts. As comedians do. There were a few roasts when I was in the DC area, and that was my favorite because it was gloves off and there was a week or two building up to this one roast we were doing of a friend of ours, and I got so many calls from different comedians, and I called different comedians, and the phone call would always start with, is it too fucked up to say? And like everybody was like, I'm gonna tear this dude down, but I don't want to make him cry. Like,
Right. There's a line. That's the point.
Yeah. But I do love that. I love the razzing, and it seems to be very male male-oriented.
Yeah, I think it like harkens back to like the days of the caveman days of going hunting as a group or something.
Sure.
And, it feels like there's a little bit of that kind of with owning your own business, which kind of, I don't know, to me feels so rewarding. It's like they used to go, they go out and they hunt down the woolly mammoth and they drag it back home for their the wife and kids to eat, and it was like very direct like that. And there's something about that with owning your own business and having a hard skill and just you hop in your van in the morning and you go to the job and you finish the tough job, you collect the check and you bring it home and your wife spends it. And there's something about that's just so rewarding. And it just feels like that's the way life was meant to be lived.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as far as camaraderie too, once you remove yourself from the pool of people who are employees and you make yourself into the contractor, the business owner, you just put yourself in a new pool of people who are also business owners. And so it doesn't have to be just trade companies.
Right.
Entrepreneurship, like you were talking about with the men in your life. It's like you can connect with people now that run businesses. Mm-hmm. And there's camaraderie in there. And we cross-train all the time talking to people from different industries that we just learn from because they're running a business too.
We were talking to Carly earlier, who owns, Attaboy. Mm-hmm. It's like talking about the merch.
Yeah.
It's like all of a sudden now a beer, brewery and electricians have something in common.
Yeah. I started going to these like business luncheons they have in the town of Purcellville and just meeting all the local small businesses and everything.
Yeah.
And completely unrelated industries, but we all kind of share the same kind of, we all went off and, took this risk and we all deal with the same kind of stresses. And it is really interesting talking to different people like that.
I love that idea of the biggest risk is not taking a chance. I love that idea.
That company, Fuel Hunt, I really like they have a shirt that says, if we risk nothing, we risk everything.
I love that. Because there's, like, it's interesting in your dynamic, you're the risk averse one and your wife is pushing you. We're the opposite in my family where my wife is the risk averse one and I'm the one encouraging her. But with this endeavor, she was all go. Really? And it says a lot because I'm all go for everything. And that's not great, dude. Like, it's not great. I could tell you, it doesn't matter.
Doug is peer pressure's best friend.
If there's an idea, I've had to teach myself to not.
Although I heard about your Baltimore stories.
Now, that's the thing about Josh.
If Doug had been there, it would have been two of us going across that field.
I'd have tripped you on the way over. No, but that's why Josh is the wild card, because you never know. You never know what he's going to do. If the Red Hot Chili Peppers come on and he's at a ball field, he might be able to be coaxed to run across the field.
So when I was 18, I was sitting we were hanging out with this guy, Tom O'Leary, if he's around anymore. And there's like six of us sitting around, and he was a friend of my friends that I was with. I was just hanging out there. We're sitting in the basement. We've been hanging out for like an hour. I'm a quiet guy for the most part. And he's like, what about this guy? What's this guy's deal? And it was wintertime, right?
What's this guy?
I was just kind of sitting there like this. It's wintertime. I've got a beanie on and a sweatshirt. I'm 18.
You're just picking a fight.
I've got like really curly hair. Most people don't know that. But at the time, I was in the Mars Volta phase, and I had grown it out to this crazy afro. Nice. So I had my hat on. It was all tucked under there, and I've got tattoos and whatnot. He's like, so what's this guy's deal? And I just pulled my hat off, and it went poof. I pulled my sweatshirt off, and he's like, whoa! He's like, I just feel like I learned so much about you that I did not anticipate.
With a simple gesture.
That's my thing, man.
That's my thing.
That sums it up.
You can't anticipate me.
Yeah, but I mean, having that balance, like, I went into a few other endeavors too, or started getting the ball rolling, and my wife just wasn't there. Mm-hmm. And there was a part of me that was like, is she not going to support me in the things I want to do? There was frustration, and she could see it, and it was definitely, there were tumultuous times where I was like, man, I really want to do this, and I see the possibility. She's not on board. Is this always going to be the case? But when it came to the electrical trade, the truth was, she's just smarter than me.
She's a good check on your...
And she knows a good thing when she sees it. And everything I was bringing to the table, she's like, that ain't going to work. Even though in my mind, I'm like, you just don't understand.
Yeah.
So I'm glad I hung on to her, because that has been beneficial, because she's right.
Your life was like an old country song where you're like, she just doesn't get me.
She don't. Women don't understand us. Drinking and singing. Yeah. No, but I'm glad I listened to her, because as soon as I got my journeyman's license, I'm sitting there, how can I leverage? The whole point, just like for you, is like to start a new life. And I feel like people who who start later and the objective is to go out on your own,
Yep.
you may have less time in,
Yep.
but just like we're saying with an 8-hour day, what if you can condense the work to 4 hours? It's the same if you're focused. Like if you're
focused and
if
motivated,
you're
yeah.
nonstop absorbing, and if you don't figure something out, you're like, nope, don't like that. I gotta understand. Okay, if you're doing that, you're doing stuff that most people in the trade in the long term might not be doing. They're just like, it's a job. I go do the job. They tell me what to do. I do what I'm doing. Whereas I'm over here watching YouTube videos of Transformers because I don't understand. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, I need to know. And
again, yeah, it's the attitude. And I knew when I got into it, I knew I was behind. I knew that I had, a family I needed to support. I knew the goal was to start my own business someday. And so I went in hyper focused. I mean, I was a sponge soaking up every single piece of knowledge I could. I was volunteering for all the toughest jobs. I was following around the most experienced guys. I mean, I would, on my time off, I was reading books. I was watching YouTube videos, listening to your guys' podcasts. I mean, every single thing to pick up just that little edge to try to get me ahead.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how much you can pick up if you're disciplined like that. And I remember when I was studying to take my master's exam, I bought some course online. It was I forgot the guy who does it. It's called like Fast Tracks or something like that. Fast Tracks Black. But I studied that, I mean, like every night for a year, and just, I mean, I was that focused to make sure that I'm gonna, as soon as I am eligible to take this thing, I'm gonna pass it. And
you don't have a choice.
yeah, and
That's the thing.
failure
Like,
was not an option
exactly.
for me. I
You
was like,
don't-
I have committed.
Yeah.
I have kids to feed. Like,
Same with your company.
I'm gonna. There's gonna be struggles, but I'm gonna get over it. And
That was one thing Jocko talks about, speaking of Jocko, where he's like, I want you to feel, fear failure, because like, fear of failure is why you study.
Yeah.
Fear of failure is why you're up late prepping.
Yeah.
That's why it matters so much to you.
Yeah.
You have to know to some degree, it's nice to have a safety net, but also to some degree, it's nice to know you don't. It's like, because that's kind of what gives you that
It's
motivation.
quite a motivator. Yeah.
Big time. I think that and anybody who hasn't gone out and tried something and failed at it doesn't have that experience to know how. What did I hear? Rick Rubin in his book, he wrote this great book recently called The Creative Act, and I listen to it all the time, but he said, failure is the information you need to move. I can't remember the second half, but it was like, failure is the information you need to move in the right direction. It's like, you need it.
Yeah.
And you're not going to get it unless you make yourself vulnerable to some degree. It's like you have to step out in a place where failure's not, and you'll never learn more about business than you will if you start a business. You can go to business school forever.
Yeah.
You'll learn a lot of things and you'll be pretty savvy, but you want to learn,
Well,
jump
and
in.
think about all the people we know who've been in an industry doing the exact same thing every day for 20 years. They successfully wire that structure or wire that house and then move on to the next one.
Yeah.
So it's like, they're not learning anything new. It's
Yeah.
like, you're not putting yourself out there, you're not failing. It's like,
But that's good too, because we need people like that. We need and not everybody who you work with that doesn't do that that's just a different.
if
we
you're
need
one of
them
those
too.
people, I love you.
But that's true too. It's like not everybody wants to do that, and that's great because we would just have nothing but one-person companies everywhere.
That's true.
And we need bigger companies
That's
with people who do the
That's
work.
a great
Yeah.
point to make, right? It's like
Yeah.
you need every type of person.
Yeah.
There are plenty of people who don't want to start a business.
That's right.
And businesses need those people.
That's 100%
It's like
right.
people who
Yeah.
like their personal life and their
Yeah.
work life separate,
Yeah.
and they want to be consistent.
That's great.
It's like, we need
Yeah.
that.
Work for the union, make big bucks.
Yeah.
I think so. That's great.
Yeah. It's not for everybody.
Yeah.
So you're one-man show at this point?
I'm a one-man show. Like I said, my wife handles a lot of the back ends, but yeah, I'm on my own every day.
She's the secret owner.
She's
we
the
know what
secret-
you're getting at.
Yeah. I hold the license, but that's about it. But yeah, I mean, it's just me, and it's tough. Like I said, I've been super busy. Everything's been really great, but it's tough being a one-man show. Like I said, I don't have anyone to bounce ideas off
Yeah.
of. I'm a little bit more inexperienced than your average guy anyway, so that's already a struggle. But there's a lot of jobs where it's like, man, I could really use another guy to help, pull this wire on the other end of the conduit, or oh man, like I need to bring in this 16-foot ladder and I got to carry it in by myself.
You probably need a person. Yeah, it's not a bad idea.
It's hard, and I have to turn down. Unfortunately, I have to turn down a lot of work that you have to make a judgment call, and I have to say, this is a little bit beyond me, or this is just something that I'm not going to be able to handle by myself in a reasonable amount of time.
Too far a drive. Yeah, maybe I don't want to drive that far. Right.
And I think that's been okay. I need to realize what my skill set is, what I'm comfortable doing, and saying no to things. And I try to constantly take on new projects to continue to learn, but I also need to be realistic with my expectations and what I think I can accomplish, and not get into something that's above my head.
Yeah,
so.
that's smart.
Where do you stand on bringing somebody on board? Are you want to keep
I
a
was
one-man
I was
show?
I was telling Doug when you were grabbing another beer that I went into this thinking I only want to be a one-man show. I don't want the headache of employees. I don't want to do that. I've never liked managing people. But I'm kind of realizing that I'm already capped. Like I'm already hit the maximum amount of hours I can put in every single week. And if I do decide I want to continue to grow it all, or if I want to try to take on some of these more complex jobs, I'm going to need help. And so I'm starting to think about it and trying to figure out, all right, how would I do this? But it brings on a whole new set of
different ballgame
of problems, and so it intimidates me a little bit. I think that intimidates me a lot more than even starting the business is hiring people.
I think
Yeah,
so.
man. I think without discouraging it all, I think that's a healthy fear.
Yeah.
It's like because you have to consider somebody else's livelihood at that point.
Yeah.
And
teaching them and their personality.
Yeah,
Did they vibe?
It's a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if that's the territory you really want to get into.
Yeah. We always feel like if it's the solution, like if
been our
growth
motto.
is the solution, like if you have a problem and the solution is more people,
you
then
don't
that makes
do it
sense.
just
That makes
because
sense.
it's
But
in front of you.
Right.
Yeah,
You
but
do
just
it
because everyone says, "Oh, you need to grow
your company,"
is
yeah.
kind of a silly reason.
Yeah,
but
if growth is the solution, and if you can manage it, it's like we only had one apprentice, but it was like he had a
he
great
still with you
personality.
guys?
He's not. He moved on. He's become a mechanic. He's training to be like
nice.
got to deal with
mechanic.
Toyota, right? He's like
What was his name? Daniel or something?
Daniel.
Yeah, that's right.
yeah, Daniel Electric. But I mean, it was even with his personality. He's a great guy.
Yeah. That was a rare find.
It was a rare find. But our model, and we've said this before, is just we like the flexibility, and we found it impossible to marry those two. He needs the hours.
Yeah.
He wants the hours.
Yeah.
And we're over here like, I kind of want to go swimming.
Yeah, I was saying when I get a short day, I'm gonna go shoot my bow or go for a hike.
Right.
They have those little lifts, not the kind you drive, but the kind you push. And they'll go 30 feet. It's a
I don't think
one-man
I've seen
lift
that,
that goes
actually.
30 feet.
Really?
It's awesome. We've never worked with one before. It's 700 pounds. And so like, you definitely, either way, you need two people.
Would you have like a powered dolly or something to get it in, or
Build a ramp.
Nope, you're
Build a ramp?
pushing it in.
really?
Yeah.
And so you're building. The ideal scenario is you've just got front door is level with the ground, and you just build a little thing over the threshold and push it in. Who is it? It wasn't Justin Royal. It's Custom Electric.
Vic. Yeah.
I think he's the one who did it. I could be wrong. Sorry if I'm getting that wrong.
Okay.
But I saw him do a post on Instagram.
Bringing a scissor
I
lift
saw
in.
that.
Yeah.
It was just a one-man vertical lift.
Yeah.
I was
that's
asking
nice.
tons of questions.
Yeah.
He said it was the only way they could do that job, but it was definitely heavy.
Yeah.
So I reached out to Rentals Unlimited in our area. It's an option. I didn't necessarily price for it or plan for it in this particular job. So that's the case of where it's like we took it on. We kind of have to. Yes, tuition. We kind of have to get through this one.
Yeah.
It might.
It just takes one,
It
and then
might
you
be
learn.
terrible. Yeah. I don't know, because like ideally, if that's the way we're going to do it moving forward as our business model, I would go out, do a site visit, and I would look at their front steps.
Yep.
Can I build a platform easy enough? Maybe I'd even take measurements and pictures of that to be a little more prepared.
Right.
We're going to show up the day of and hope it works.
Yeah, and who hasn't done that?
Yeah.
You have to a lot of times come up with the plan and then figure
works.
it out. Yeah,
Audible,
yeah, and you can look foolish sometimes doing that, but the truth is, it's like unless you do the same thing every day.
And most of the
it's
time, those
inevitable.
soft skills are what are going to save you, because the customer, they know you, they see you, and you're honest. It's like you're going to be like, this is what we're trying to do, and it just didn't work.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
they're usually going to work with you.
Just communicate well and be honest and try to set those expectations ahead of time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you ever try to sell them on putting in like a winch?
We talk about that.
Yeah.
Have you ever done like a genie lift?
I've never done one, but
So the hard sell there is that typically they take a switch leg for the actual light,
right.
but then it recommends a 20 amp circuit, dedicated circuit,
For the
to
motor.
wherever the motor and the control on the wall.
Interesting.
So all of a sudden it goes from a foyer fixture swap to now you're cutting holes to get a circuit up to wherever you want to put this
I
key.
see. Yeah.
So, and they're like, wait, so who does this help? And it's like, well, it helps the electricians. And they're like, who else? And it's like, you know, they're
Mostly
like,
us, but-
I'm like, well, it'll help you clean the fixture. They're like, we don't normally clean that. It's like, so it's a hard sell.
You can change bulbs.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's
It is
it's
a hard
tricky.
sell. Yeah, and the winch themselves are there. Like it's like $1,500.
Yeah,
bucks.
they're
right.
not cheap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you got to look at that. It's like,
But at a certain point too, it's like, okay, you got this giant brass. It's like, sorry, I just can't lift this up with a
that's
ladder.
right. Yeah.
It's like, I
yeah.
mean,
We've done one where I think we took a video of it where Josh was the point man, and he had the chain and the canopy and the bracket, and I had this like 50-pound crystal chandelier on basically my head and my neck, and I'm following him up one rung at a time on a 60. It's like absurd. It's absurd. At that point, price for the lift, look like a professional.
Yeah.
You know, if they'd have come in and seen us, they'd have been
I
like
think
terrified.
we did one where we had to, this customer was moving, and we had to disassemble a fixture that was already there. Tons of crystal. It's like a three-story,
Oh, that one was
it's like a
bonkers.
three-story foyer. Well, I think after we finished, the client was like, "Oh yeah, I think the electrician who installed it just had a lift." We were like,
That was a crazy one. That was so crazy. It was like a really nice house in DC, wrap around, staircase, going up and up.
oh yeah.
And then this chandelier, this massive 2-story down chandelier that occupied that entire space, had 200 crystals. We had a whole team disassembling and marking and organizing each crystal.
Wow.
And we had to get an extension ladder to the 2nd-story landing and extend it to the skylight that was right before the box in the ceiling.
Yeah.
So we have a 2-story, where we have a extension ladder from the 2nd-story landing across the 2nd-story drop to the foyer into the skylight, because that's all we could do.
Yeah.
And we
See,
got it. We didn't die.
I'm scared of heights too, so that stuff. I mean, I just do it. Like I
Yeah,
put up with
sure,
it, but
yeah.
but I hate every moment of it.
Okay.
I mean, I'm petrified the entire time.
Okay.
And so something like that, which is
Yeah.
Yeah.
man, that
I'm
would be-
also scared of heights. So my rule of thumb is it has to. I can get over the fear of it if I know that my setup is relatively
is
safe.
safe.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's
I don't
like
like
the
the janky.
In that case, we had that ladder jammed up against the skylight.
It wasn't
up
slipping
against
out
the
or
back.
anything,
It
yeah.
wasn't going to slip.
Yeah.
It's only I could have slipped. Yeah. But luckily, I was in the Marine Corps, and I'm really used to doing sketchy shit that I don't really want to do. And I'm good at compartmentalizing, like that sort of thing, and being like, okay,
So they say you were the one who went up.
I went up, which is great. I like
That's
to get up.
also
Yeah.
the balance of our relationship.
Yeah.
Is every time I'm about to be like, oh man, Doug's like, I'll do it.
Yeah.
Okay, sure. Yeah. I mean, I was gonna do it. I was like, if you said you wanted to.
Yeah.
Every time we have a crawl space, Doug's like, can I go? I'm like,
Of course,
I really wanted
crawl
to.
space.
But
I like a crawl space. What can I say?
Maybe it's just an older, like historic Frederick here. I don't have a lot of crawl spaces
Okay.
in Northern
Yeah.
Virginia.
More
It's all
basements,
mostly
yeah.
it's all suburban basements,
Nice, yeah.
more modern homes.
Yeah,
so-
we're like
You'll get one now.
Yeah, we're like 200-year-old buttholes under
yeah.
houses.
I mean, I get it every now and then,
Skeletons.
but yeah, it seems like you're in one every day.
Not as much anymore, but yeah, every now and again I get lucky.
Yeah, my wife was like, "What do you do about like spiders and stuff?" I was like, "Just
You
don't."
eat 'em.
The goal is you don't look around
Yeah,
too much.
yeah,
Just focus on your goal. You'll be fine.
I'm bigger than a spider too. I always keep that in mind. I'm way bigger than a spider.
And sometimes when you have a complicated job, the spider's the least of your worries. Like, I mean,
100%.
you don't even care about that stuff at
100%,
that point.
yeah.
You're like, I got to get this done.
The sketchiest install I've ever done. Every time I go back to this place, it's a cidery near here. Every time I go back, they want to talk about it. The dude saved the picture and he says he shows their clients. We had a ceiling that was maybe,
This is in Middletown.
this is in Middletown. The ceiling was maybe 25 feet, 25, 30. We had a 16-foot A-frame.
Nice.
It was a subfloor, finished floor wasn't in. So what we did, this wasn't my call, this was the owner of the company. We set up the A-frame, and we toenailed it into the subfloor. So now that A-frame, she ain't going nowhere.
Yep.
Then we took an extension ladder, and we extended that up the A-frame, and we tacked that in.
Ratchet strap.
Romex, no ratchet.
Yeah.
You know, that's all you need.
The electrician's ratchet strap.
And then basically I climbed up, and I had to, it was a pointing, what do they call it? Grooved flooring?
Tongue and groove
flooring. And I had to cut a 4-inch hole with so I'm up there with a drill that can totally buck you. Climbed up it, wrapped Romex around my midsection, and tied it like that's going to do anything except
That was your safety harness?
choke me when I fucking
Cut you in
fall.
half when you fall.
And then my friend who was working with us at the time, a guy named Garrett, he climbs up the other side of the 16, and he stands as high as he can, and he literally wraps his arms around like my waist. So they got this picture of me with the hole saw 25 feet up with Garrett holding me on an extension ladder tacked to an A-frame. That was the sketchiest one I've ever done.
Yeah.
We got it done.
Yeah, we're lucky that there's not a lot of OSHA officers.
I
no doubt.
was like, OSHA's like, can we get a copy of that picture, please?
I'll tell you who the owner of the company was. Wasn't me. I don't do that shit with our company. There's no
Dude,
way.
that's OSHA. It's like in 1984, right? How the kids report to parents.
Yeah.
OSHA gets you because they're like, well, we'll find you personally, not even just the owner, which makes the employee kind of like.
Well, I'll take back what I just said then. Shit never happened. That was just a story I made up because I felt cool.
Which happens a lot.
Yes.
Doug and I are at Nika talking to people, and we're like, yeah, but will it make us cool? They're like, what?
No, like we're trying to make money here. We're like, yeah, but like how
Yeah,
cool?
but how cool is it?
We got our priorities. We know who we are.
How was Nika? Was it a good time?
Oh, dude, it's a blast.
Always fun.
Yeah.
I recommend it.
Well, it's like this, but there's 5 other people at the table.
Okay.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah.
everyone we've met has been awesome. The kind of people who go there are the kind of people who are into it for like the same reasons we are.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like you end up with like a lot of like-minded people.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. It's just fun. It's just fun to like. I love a party. It's always good. It's always like just so much fun. It's cool to see
You
all
guys
the
have built
tools.
such a good network too.
It's
of all
fun.
these,
Yeah, but I mean, it's a matter of just being. You'll always find the people who are like you if you just go be yourself and put it out there. You're not going to appeal to everybody, but that's fine.
Yeah.
You don't want to appeal
And
to
then
everybody.
we walk around. I mean, we like to see, like, I love going on the trade show floor. A lot of the products are definitely geared towards like commercial, industrial.
Totally.
There are definitely some that are still our speed, but for the most part, the most fun is like, the other people from around the country who you've known online,
Yeah.
and now you're meeting them in person.
Yeah, had on the show before, want to have on the show. And right when we got there, we get in and we register, and I turn around and there's a guy going, I know you. And it's D from Humboldt Electric in Humboldt County, California. And I've been following D for years, and I love his work. So just that's what it's like.
Yeah.
You just go there, and people are like, Doug and Josh. And
That's cool.
it's fun.
Yeah,
it's
you're
a
like
lot
a
of
celebrity
fun.
over there.
It's
Yeah.
like being a celebrity. That's probably what we like about it. is
Yeah.
People carry us around on their shoulders. It's not like that. But it's a lot.
Red
It's a good
carpet
time.
out, yeah.
And just meeting up with the people who are working on similar things. Like we hung out with.
Yeah, you can all relate and share stories.
you're,
It's fun.
you're working
Yeah.
on whatever your brand and your platform is, and how you each can help each other, and then you see a new city and get to like hang out,
Have
experience the
food
city,
and-
eat cool food.
Yeah.
Last year at Austin was really cool because
Yeah, man.
we discovered that there's brisket in everything.
Yeah.
Yep.
The Houston airport smells like brisket. The
Yeah.
whole thing.
Texas
I don't know
is
if they
great.
go around with like a
Austin specifically is
Febreze,
great,
a
yeah.
brisket Febreze.
Meanwhile, anyone who lives in Philly, I'm sorry, but Philly stinks.
It's pretty stinky downtown anyway. Yeah. I said it smells like
Not-
Ben Franklin pisses all over the city every night.
You're not a
gross.
cheesesteak guy, huh?
We did. We got cheese.
Cheesesteaks were
yeah.
good
Really
if you
good.
plug your nose.
Yeah.
It just was hard, and we were in the downtown area. So there's a lot of cities are tricky for me. A lot of people are you can compartmentalize that, but I like cities because they're dense and there's all this history. And in Philly in particular, the architecture's out of control.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Out of control
yeah.
craftsmanship. And there was a cool street festival going on, and there was this really awesome market, big. It took up like 3 blocks, and inside there was like every type of thing you could want to buy, mostly food. But then you come outside, and there's people smoking crack, and there's abject poverty, and people are sleeping on the sidewalk, and it smells like urine.
There was a guy peeing in the corner who
Yeah.
didn't even look like he needed to.
Yeah, just a
Like,
dude in the
you know what
morning
I mean?
peeing
Like,
in
he
the
just
corner.
looked like he was
Yeah.
on his way to work. And
Yeah,
he's
just
"Oh,
like,
stop
I'll
right
just
here."
piss on
Wearing
this
like a
building.
suit and tie, or
Yeah,
So
basically.
cities are tricky like that
Yeah.
because most cities you go to there's a similarity to that.
But it's also interesting how they all definitely have their own feel.
Yeah.
Like Austin they talk about Austin, keep Austin weird. It was
yeah.
definitely unique.
Yeah,
it's
totally.
got a great vibe to it, for
Yeah.
sure.
A lot of
Yeah.
homelessness there too, though. I felt the same
Well,
way.
yeah, I think that's everywhere you go, right?
It's just rough. It just is
But-
like it's hard to go and be like, that was awesome, because it was like there's part of it that you're like, that's awful. Yeah, and that's cities. It's so funny. I had this experience where I was waiting tables years ago, and I had 2 friends. Believe it or not, both came into the restaurant and both had gotten back from India. Both, and I was like, what are the odds? So I'm talking with this guy Mark, and he's like, it was terrible. There was so much poverty. It was so crowded. It was so hard to feel good about it. And then I go talk. What was the other guy's name? I can't think of his name. But he's like, I was like, how's India? Oh man, amazing, beautiful, great people. It's just so funny. It's like
You're like, well, where'd you stay? He's like, I slept on the street.
smoke crack for the first time.
Slumdog Millionaire.
Yeah. So it's tricky. Cities are tricky like that. But I mean, next year is going to be in San Diego for Nika, and I did my military training in San Diego, and it's a real pretty spot.
Nice.
I will probably get some flashbacks.
I'm definitely
going
going to
there.
be waking him up at like 2 a.m.
Nah.
Making him tuck his shirt into his underwear.
Well, the Marine Corps recruit depot, where they train recruits and make them into Marines, is attached to the San Diego airport.
Really?
So we would be there all day watching planes taking passengers home and just be like, come get me. People would like try to scale the fence. It was like prison. People would like trying to break it, like, I can't do it anymore.
I love how that's their accent.
Yeah, that's how he was like, I can't do it. But that was one of the harder parts, was that you're attached to this airport. That was the thing that brought you there, and it'll be the thing that makes you leave, and you're homesick. And anyway, very interesting. Yeah. Just so long as there's no dial soap and no Tabasco sauce, I will probably not have flashbacks.
Tabasco sauce.
Yeah, it's all the chow halls in boot camp. There's a big old bottle of Tabasco, so that's like
That's
the
how you
only
flavor
flavoring
it.
you
That's
get.
how you mask it.
And then everything's clean with dial soap. Everything, like, everything's dial. Every pump thing is dial. And it might be different now, but I think the Marine Corps has got some sort of deal with dial soap.
Makes
So anytime
sense.
I smell it, I'm just like,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah, so we'll try not to do that next year. I'll try to have a good time. Trauma sticks, man. It sticks in the body,
That's funny that you were in the
I
Marine Corps
know.
and then you became a comedian.
I
like
know,
I always
yeah.
thought the Marine Corps kind of knocked all that humor out
It
of you.
sure
but-
tried, man. It sure tried. I think that I'm really happy that I joined the Marine Corps. I'm really happy that I got, because similar to what you're doing, where you knew you needed to make this change and it had to be drastic, I had to get out of my hometown. I had to. And I think for a lot of people in a situation that's not good, the military is awesome, because you can make a life for yourself. And if anything, like me, I didn't want a life in the military after I had been in there and was like, this isn't for me. But I'm here today because I got out of my hometown through the military. It's not that there's anything wrong with my hometown. I just didn't see myself going anywhere there, and I knew I wanted to do something. And that was my ticket out. If you don't have money and you're looking for an opportunity, it's really good for you. So I'm glad I did it.
I've also heard some hilarious stories
Yeah.
from Doug about being in the military.
Oh, I'm going to write a book.
So that's
Yeah.
helped my life.
Yeah. I'm going to write a book called This One Time at Boot Camp. And it's just, there's so many amazing stories of my experience in the Marine Corps, because it's such a wild world.
Yep.
And the dudes who come in, and they're just a wild bunch of weirdos. So I do miss it to some degree. I don't miss similar to 9 to 5s, the military was hard because it's a lot of like, we got to be here even though there's nothing really going on, and let's
a
make
lot
a
of
bunch of
bureaucracy.
busy
So if
work.
you could start your own military, You know?
It would be a guerrilla military for sure. It would mostly be about t-shirts. It'd mostly be about t-shirts and stickers.
Really cool logos.
Stickers. It'd be a militia, mostly for drinking beer and playing cards or something.
Oh, dude, that could be a limited run modern electrician shirt. Is it the Doug Powell militia?
There you go. I like that.
We'll have to come up with a better, more scarier name.
Oh, we'll release them at San Diego.
That's not a bad idea. An annual release of some shirts. I like that a lot.
Watch out for them.
So, Chris, before we wrap,
Yeah.
where can people find you online? Do you have a website? You've got a social media presence. I know that.
Yeah, I got a website. It's DanielElectricVA.com. Daniel Electric wasn't available, unfortunately,
Of course.
but I am in Virginia, so DanielElectricVA.com. And then I have an Instagram. My wife does most of the posting, but it's I think it's just Daniel Electric VA is the username, and that's about it. So
That's great.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. Dude,
Awesome.
we appreciate you.
Yeah.
You came all this way.
No,
just
I
to sit and
appreciate
chat,
this. This is a dream of mine coming on
Awesome.
here. Like I said, I feel like I've really made it in the electrical industry now. I got my business. I've been on Modern Electrician.
Don't let us be your benchmark. Man.
Yeah, man. I agree
You
with
might
that
have just made
statement.
it onto a list.
Yeah. No, cool, man. We appreciate it.
This is great, and I'm
bless.
definitely going to use you guys as a resource.
I will.
in the
Please
future
do.
if
Make sure you
guys
get
are
both of our
serious about
numbers.
that.
And,
Yeah.
and dude, legit, if you get stumped or if you're in it, just call.
Yep.
Just be like, yo, man,
No
what do you do?
16-foot A-frames.
Dude, so I've got my friend Ben is a plumber. When I need Ben, I call Ben. When my friend Garrett that I mentioned is a contractor. Garrett calls me all the time because he'll end up doing electrical stuff with and he's is this?
My
that,
buddy
yeah.
Edwin, who works at the company I used to work for, calls me over asking the master electrician who still actively works at that company.
Really?
Yeah. So, like, dude, that's...
It's an honor.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's not nothing. It's not to brag about me, other than the fact that I'm open to him calling me.
Yeah.
It's like that's what we need more of in this industry.
Yeah.
And 20 years from now, I hope you have that same mentality for people that have worked with you.
I hope so. Yeah.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks, Chris.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks, attaboy.
Thanks, attaboy. All right.
That was awesome.